Three stories are shaping the most dangerous week in Middle East geopolitics in years. First, Trump is openly threatening to bomb Iran's oil island again, and this time he says it might just be for fun. Second, Iran's foreign minister has confirmed that Russia and China are providing military cooperation to Tehran as the war escalates. And third, Trump is quietly lifting sanctions on Russian oil to keep global energy markets from collapsing, while promising they will come back once the Iran crisis ends. These three developments are not isolated. They are connected, and together they reveal how fast the global order is shifting right now. Let's start with the most explosive statement of the weekend. Speaking to NBC News on Saturday, March 14th, President Donald Trump threatened to strike Iran's Kharg island again. And here is where it gets truly extraordinary. Trump said, and these are his words, "We can hit there a few more times, just for fun." Kharg Island is not a random target. It is the beating heart of Iran's oil export infrastructure. Roughly 90% of Iran's crude oil exports pass through that island. Destroying it significantly does not just hurt Iran. It sends shockwaves through global energy markets because every barrel Iran cannot export tightens supply for the entire world. Trump had previously framed U.S. strikes on Kharg as targeting military assets. Now he is openly suggesting that future strikes could happen simply as a show of force, or worse, as entertainment. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi responded on CBS's Face the Nation on Sunday, March 15th, calling the conflict an illegal war with no winner. There are people being killed just because President Trump wants to have fun. That is what he said, Araghchi stated. Whatever your position on the underlying conflict, the language coming from the White House is unlike anything we have seen from an American president during an active military engagement. It signals that Washington is not operating under tight strategic constraints right now, and that alone should concern anyone watching global stability. Now here is where the picture becomes significantly more complicated. On the same day that Trump was threatening strikes on Iranian oil infrastructure, Iran's foreign minister was sitting for interviews confirming something that Western governments have been carefully avoiding saying out loud. Russia and China are providing military cooperation to Iran. Araghchi told MS Now on Saturday that Tehran has had close cooperation with both Moscow and Beijing, political, economic, and military. He was not vague about it. He used the phrase military cooperation directly. This is a remarkable moment of public transparency from a senior Iranian official in the middle of an active war with the United States and Israel. Trump himself acknowledged on Friday that Putin is probably helping Iran a little, framing it as a mirror image of American support for Ukraine. The Iran-Russia relationship has been building for years. Iran has supplied Russia with Shahed drones, the very weapons Moscow has been using to strike Ukrainian cities, and the two countries even set up drone manufacturing facilities on Russian soil. In 2021, Iran signed a 25-year economic cooperation agreement with China worth hundreds of billions of dollars, built largely around Iranian oil flowing to Chinese refineries. What we are watching now is that alliance structure being stress-tested in real time by an American military campaign. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway between Iran and Oman that carries roughly 1/5 of the world's oil and gas, has become the focal point. Araghchi confirmed that Iran has restricted passage for American and Israeli tankers and vessels from their allies. Oil prices have surged past $100 per barrel as a direct consequence, and the economic ripple effects are beginning to be felt in markets across Europe, Asia, and the Americas. And this brings us to the third story, which ties everything together in a way that raises serious questions about the coherence of American foreign policy right now. While the United States is bombing Iran and threatening to do it again just for fun, the Treasury Department quietly issued a temporary license allowing countries to purchase Russian oil that is currently sitting on tankers at sea. The license was announced just days before Trump's NBC interview on March 14th. and it is set to expire on April 11th. A separate waiver was granted the previous week, specifically allowing India to buy Russian crude already loaded on ships to compensate for supply disruptions coming out of the Middle East. Trump's justification is straightforward. The world needs oil, Iran is blocking part of the supply, and Russian oil can fill the gap. "I want oil for the world. I want oil," he said. But here is the geopolitical irony that you cannot ignore. The United States spent 3 years building a sanctions regime against Russian oil specifically designed to starve Moscow of the revenue it needs to fund its invasion of Ukraine. That war is now in its 5th year, and in the span of 2 weeks of fighting with Iran, Washington has partially dismantled that sanctions framework, giving Russia a financial windfall of approximately 6 billion euros, or roughly $6.9 billion, according to the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air. Russia's Kremlin economic negotiator Kirill Dmitriev wasted no time celebrating, saying on the X platform that Russian energy is indispensable for relieving the world's greatest energy crisis and predicting that European bureaucrats will soon be forced to admit their strategic mistakes. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called the sanctions relief a serious blow to Ukraine and a reputational blow to the entire world, asking publicly how sanctions against Russia can be suspended when Russia is the aggressor financing its war with oil revenues. Trump's response was to deflect, blaming Zelensky for not reaching a peace deal with Putin, saying he is surprised Zelensky does not want to make a deal and urging him to negotiate because Putin is willing. The Kremlin, meanwhile, is watching this unfold from a position of unexpected comfort. A war between its two main adversaries, the United States and Iran, is generating billions in additional oil revenue for Moscow while simultaneously straining Washington's diplomatic and military resources. Whether that outcome was planned or simply fortunate for Putin is a question worth sitting with. If you are following this channel because you want analysis that goes deeper than the headlines, that connects the dots between what is happening in Tehran, Moscow, Washington, and Beijing, then take a second right now and subscribe. Hit the bell so you do not miss what comes next, because this situation is moving fast and every development matters. What we are witnessing on March 15, 2026, is a convergence of crises that no single actor fully controls. The United States is engaged in active combat with Iran, while simultaneously relaxing pressure on Russia. Russia is benefiting financially from the conflict while quietly supporting the country the U.S. is bombing. China has deep economic ties to Iran through a long-term oil agreement that gives Beijing a direct stake in how this war ends. And Iran is playing its one major card, the Strait of Hormuz, with enough precision to avoid a complete collapse while keeping global energy markets on edge. Trump's just-for-fun comment, whatever its intent, lands in this context not as bravado, but as a signal that the United States is willing to escalate without a defined endpoint. And that is the part of this story that deserves the most attention. What happens to the April 11th deadline on Russian sanctions relief if the war is still going? What happens to global oil prices if Kharg Island is struck again? And what does Chinese and Russian military cooperation with Iran actually look like behind closed doors? Drop your read on all of this in the comments. What do you think the next move is, and who stands to gain the most from where we are right now?